rolling. Bill, thank you for taking the time, sir. I appreciate it.
Hey, thank you for having me, Bobby. This is fun.
Yeah, this should be a good time to talk about a little bit of success. We were just before we got on chatting about how 17 different projects. That's a pretty impressive resume, to say the least. 5 movies, 3 books, 2 magazines, 5 different websites or internet companies, and then 2 TV shows. That is extremely impressive. So my first question to kind of start us off here is, where does that drive come from? What drives you?
Well, I mean, I think, before all of that, I also was a freestyle skier and a mogul skier. And I think it's just the innate hustle that was born during that decade that I did that. Right. And just really, I think honestly, I'm driven by sort of 3 things, and that's insecurity, right? Like, I never know if I'm going to be good enough to do something. Mm-hmm. Curiosity in terms of like, hey, do you think I could do this? And then, sort of some, I don't know what chutzpah, I guess, that's like, right? It's like mogul skiing, right? It's like, I don't know if you ever had this feeling, but I remember mogul skiing, and I'd be in the zone and I'd be competing all day long. And this was that pro format, and it was like 4 warm-up runs and then probably 8 competition runs if you made it into the top 8 of the top 4. Right. And, you're just jacked and you're into it. And I remember going up to get my bag and my extra skis at the top of the course. And I remember looking down the course when the day was all over at Killington. Okay. And I remember looking at the course going, without any adrenaline or anything, I was like, there's no way I would ski that. That thing looks ridiculous. Like that course looks like a death trap. No sane person would ever do that. Mm-hmm. But when you're all jacked up and when trying to challenge yourself, you're throwing yourself down that course. And I think it's been a similar approach to most of the other challenges that I've taken on. You just fire it up and you wonder if you can do it. And sometimes you can and sometimes you can't.
I mean, it's super inspiring, at least for me, to just hear that many projects and that many different things, to kind of go down the avenue and just at least make the attempt. I think there are certainly a lot of people out there where fear of failure kind of cripples them to even make the attempt at, like, hey, I have this really good idea, but it's probably not going to work. So why even make the effort of doing it, right?
Well, and the truth is, any sane person would say that, right? Like, and I'm not saying I'm insane, but the odds against success in any startup endeavor, mm-hmm. they're always against you. Like, so if you just played the safe bet, you probably would never start something new. I mean, because it's not safe. But then again, life's not safe, right? Sure. Life, is set up so that ultimately you fail, right? Yeah. Like, you live until you die, and if dying is a failure, then you failed. Right. And I think, both you and I, having participated in individual sports, mm-hmm. particularly mogul skiing, and I was thinking about this when I knew I'd talk to you. So I skied on that pro mogul tour for 10 years. Yeah. Right? Yeah. So that was 10 years of, if you think about it, consistent failure. Because I finished every single competition by losing. I never won the event. So my last race, I always lost. Yeah. Right? Yep. Yeah. Oh, I guess unless it was a 5 through 8 race. Right. Right. Yeah. So, but in general, I always lost every single time I competed. So if you want to talk about getting over fear of failure, sure. Like, some individual sport like that where you lose. Yeah. In my case, maybe I wasn't that good, but you lose all the time, right? Yeah, right. And you just get over it, and Yeah, there is something kind of about having to navigate over it, right? Through it. And athletics provides such a fantastic avenue for that,
one of your startups, I definitely have to say thank you, because Rally Me absolutely helped in my career, kind of keeping me afloat while I was working 3 jobs and trying to train and trying to come up with funding for a ski season. So for those out there that Rally Me, it's now Sports Engine, right?
Yeah, and actually Sports Engine has just decided to horizon it.
Okay.
So it doesn't exist anymore, which is a bummer for athletes like you were. I'm super stoked that it did help.
Yeah, that was awesome.
It's really fun. Like every so often I'll meet somebody who goes, I raised this much money. It allowed me to do this much.
Yep.
And thank you. So, and that's what I built it for, right? That's,
yeah.
It wasn't a get rich quick scheme. We didn't get rich, but we helped a lot of people. So
yeah. No, so for those out there, it's kind of similar to like a Kickstarter or like a GoFundMe, right? Where you would donate and that would kind of go towards your, you could use it towards your ski season or whatever.
And actually, funny enough, it started in Park City. It started, before I did that, I was making a movie about the women ski jumpers. The film ended up being Ready to Fly, but it was sort of their fight for gender equality in the Olympics. And there was a scene that I always remember in the Park City Sunday Market where you had Lindsey Vann, Sarah Hendrickson, and Abby Hughes. And so one world champion, one about to be world champion, and the other top 10 in the world. And they're standing behind a folding table with a salad bowl on the table. And they're saying, have you heard about women ski jumping? Anything you could give would really help.
Yep.
And people are putting $1 and $2 in the salad bowl. And I was pissed for these athletes, right? I'm like, these guys are kicking ass at their sport and, they're not being funded. And this just seems like a demeaning way to go about it.
Sure.
And the film I was making at the time, we had a very difficult time raising money for it as well.
Gotcha.
And a former agent of mine was one of the early employees at Indiegogo crowdfunding.
Okay.
He's the one who showed me crowdfunding, but at the time it wasn't the right vibe for us. So myself and a colleague, Utah-based colleague, Whitney Childers, we built our own super simple crowdfunding platform just for the movie.
Okay.
And it worked. And so then fast forward, I'm making the movie and watching the dollars go into the salad bowl. And I'm like, wait, we just did this crowdfunding thing. It totally worked. Where's the crowdfunding for athletes? Where's the crowdfunding for sports?
Right.
And it didn't exist. And so we created it. I got super lucky in that playing men's league hockey in Salt Lake, I was in a locker room and I was trying to convince this guy who was a computer programmer to sort of help me build my vision for what this crowdfunding platform could be. And this guy from across the room, the locker room, says, oh, you mean like Kickstarter? And I said, yeah, like Kickstarter, but for sports.
Yep.
And he goes, yeah, well, I built that. And I go, what? You didn't build Kickstarter. Like, no, dude, I built Kickstarter. Turned out he had built Kickstarter. So, so he was their first tech lead, their first CTO.
Okay.
So I got him on board. His name's Tim Rupert. And we built Rally Me, ran it for 4 years, sold it to NBC. And then it became part of Sports Engine, which NBC also bought.
Okay.
And I actually went to work for them for 18 months.
Gotcha. And how was, so what's the difference with like, what is Sports Engine essentially the same thing or the same platform? And you can fund athletes or different teams and things of that nature? Is that what Sports Engine essentially is?
Sports Engine is essentially a registration company.
Okay.
They do the registrations for youth and amateur sports. They're very successful at it.
Okay.
You know, the 3 founders ran it for 10 years before selling it to NBC. They're out of the picture now. They have a lot of other features. It's a sport tech company.
Okay.
Yeah, like I said before, they've retired Rally Me.
Yeah.
Frankly, because I think they got a better deal from another crowdfunding company
Gotcha.
that does things a bit differently.
Okay.
It wouldn't work for you today.
Yeah. Right.
So that one, the other company that took Rally Me's place in the Sports Engine lineup, they focus on schools. So they go into a high school. They actually run the pep rally. They actually, send the emails. They do all that stuff, and they take like 30%. We were different, and so we were focused on getting and keeping kids in sports.
Right.
By helping them raise a relatively small amount of money.
Mm-hmm.
And the premise that I had rolling into it, so I don't know how much you raised, so we'll see if this holds water, but I thought anybody at almost any level with a social network could raise $3,000.
Yep. I raised more than that, so.
I remember that you were on there, so I think you raised quite a bit more than that.
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah, no, that's awesome, and you're kind of sticking with that sports avenue with Great Coach now. It's kind of another new startup, and talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so I went to work for Sports Engine, and that was obvious that wasn't going to be a long-term solution. So I started thinking about what I wanted to do next. At the time, I was coaching 3 hockey teams and a lacrosse team. So I was coaching a lot. And my work at Sports Engine was such that I was able to look at every sport tech company in business and see what they were doing and see where the gaps were. And what it seemed to me is that we were helping a lot of people do things like registering kids, like scheduling games, like scheduling officials, like paying officials, like all this stuff. But the most important piece, and I know you're a coach, so I think you'll agree with this, the most important piece in the whole youth and amateur sports equation is the coach-athlete relationship.
Absolutely,
right?
Yeah.
That's where all the good stuff happens. And while I was thinking about this company, it occurred to me that that's also where all the bad stuff happens, right? Yeah. So the USA Gymnastics tragedy was happening.
Yeah.
That was, giving way to lots of other media stories about bad things happening. And I thought, okay, so is there anything we could do to improve the coach-athlete relationship? Well, first of all, what do we know about it? Well, not much. Really?
Yeah.
If you're a youth hockey player, youth soccer player, you're probably going to talk to your neighbors, or if you have a kid who plays, and they're going to say, yeah, Coach Bill. Right. We had Coach Bill last year. He was great. Cool. You should sign up with his team. Right. And parents roll in and they go, yeah, Coach Bill. Well, what's his last name? Oh, we don't know, but the Joneses said that he was awesome. So,
yeah,
our kid wants to play on his team. And so I tested this theory, and I did a really informal survey of youth and amateur sports parents. It was 2 questions. And question 1 was, have you ever Googled your kid's coach? Question 2 was, have you ever Googled where to go to lunch? Right? And so I couldn't buy a yes to question 1. Nobody had ever Googled their kid's coach.
Yeah.
Right? And I asked everybody. The first person actually who said they had, and this was well into the hundreds, maybe over 1,000 respondents, was Eric Heiden, right? An Olympian, 5-time gold medalist. He said,
and one hell of a knee surgeon.
He did one hell of a knee surgeon, yes. His wife, by the way, did my bicep.
Yeah, he did my knee and my shoulder. So yeah, Heiden's the man.
I got one of those for him too now. But so I thought, well, that's really interesting. So what conclusion can I draw from that? Do parents suck and not care about their kids? No. Right? They care deeply about their kids.
Absolutely.
But from the data, you might think that they care more about the meatball sub for lunch than they do about the guy or gal they're dropping their kid off with for 10, 20 hours a week.
That's crazy. That's super
right?
interesting that you're able to see those and it's one of those things that's so important, right? Like that, as you talk about that coach athlete relationship, and for the long term, right? Say you have a high school football coach and it's those 4 years of high school are some of the most formative of your life. And whether it's that ski coach, I mean, that molds your entire outlook on life, and those lessons, those life lessons and those coaching lessons that you get have such profound impact on you. I mean, it's crazy to think that they're Googling the meatball sub and Coach Bill. Yeah. We heard from the neighbors, got to go with.
Yeah. And so exactly. And a great coach can impact positively a kid for life, as you just, but a bad coach can too.
Sure. Yeah.
Negatively. Right. And so I kind of dug into that in my thinking and talked to a lot of people and thought, well, why is that? We use information technology. It basically, IT innervates every sphere now, right? Like if you're a farmer, you're in IT, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
You're watching your data, but not in youth sports. That's crazy. And so digging deeper, what we learned was they just trusted somebody else had done it, right?
Right.
The ski club, the hockey club, the soccer club, the school, whomever. Someone else surely has done it, right? Somebody else surely has made sure that coach has training, that coach has a background check, safe sport training, concussion training, first aid, the basics of what you should have to work with youth. And being in youth and amateur sports coaching, it's not always the case. And actually, and so then why isn't it the case? Well, because it's hard, right? It's really hard to keep track of. If you have a small club and you got 8 coaches, okay, you can do it.
Right.
Make sure everybody's background check is clean, and make sure that everybody's got training, and make sure everybody knows how to talk to kids. And but what happens when you have 80 or 800 or 8,000 coaches?
Yeah.
Right. Then it's kind of left to chance again. And so I thought we could build a platform that would make it really easy for youth and amateur sports organizations to ensure that the coaches are qualified, trained, screened, and solid, right?
Yeah.
As much as we could, but we could definitely improve things.
Right.
And so I took basically my same team from Rally Me, same CTO, same co-founder, Scott Zeller, lawyer, partner, and started this company.
Right.
The day after I finished with Sports Engine on January 31st, 2018. February 2nd, we launched Great Coach. We rolled the product out into the market 6 months and 1 day later, because that's how long my non-compete was. And so the day after we launched it, and we brought this to all these youth and amateur sports organizations, and we said, we can help you with best practices. We built coaching tools. We built the ability for a one-stop shop app where coaches could be safe sport trained, background check, CDC heads up concussion, first aid, sports specific training. And then we also added in the tools for coaches to do a better job, such as one of the challenges coaching teenagers is communicating with them, in my case, off the ice. Right?
Yeah.
But you do not want to have non-transparent electronic communication, meaning kids, don't text me, don't IM me, don't follow me, right?
Yep.
Because that's not safe sport compliant, and it's also just a bad idea.
Right.
And misunderstandings can happen. So we built something called safe messaging that allows a coach to message directly with a minor athlete by blind copying the parent in the app, and also saving a non-editable, non-deletable record of the
So
communication
you can see what the message
for the
is
admin.
communicated.
Right.
Awesome.
So we built all these things, great, you know, real best practices. I was so fired up. We rolled it out into the market and nobody wanted it. Right. Like, I mean,
That's crazy.
you know, everywhere I went, they'd be like, yeah, Bill, man, you nailed it. It's so cool. Great. We're really cool over here. You should go talk to those guys over there. They're a little shaky, but you know, we really got our act together.
Right.
All right. Yeah. So we kind of failed at that for a while. I was lucky enough from Rally Me, I have good connections and basically a whole lifetime in sports.
Sure.
I was able to get a sit down with the then new CEO of the U.S. Olympic Committee, U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Committee, Sarah Hirschland. And so I showed her what we were doing. She said, man, that's fantastic. And, you know, and I said, someday we're going to have a national public facing database of every coach, trainer, volunteer who spends time with kids and the credentials that allow them to do so. She's like, I love it. I love it. But obviously we can't implement any of that. You can't expect me to go to my board with that because it's unproven. I said, yeah, it's unproven. I can't get anybody to bite on this idea. We're 6 months in. And she said, well, have you thought about doing a pilot program? I said, it's a good idea. We'll do a pilot program with a national governing body. So Tiger Shaw and US Ski and Snowboard were generous enough to do a pilot program with us in early 2019. And we used it for their rookie camp and for 3 of the development camps, which I know you've gone to, so you know what those scenes look like. And 3/4 of the way through that couple-month process, somebody said to me, you know, this best practices is all well and good, but what we really need is to comply with the Safe Sport Act. We really need to comply with state and federal laws. We really need to comply with background check requirements from the NGBs, from the USOPC. And I was like, yeah, but we built that. We got that. And then it dawned on me like, oh, forget best practices. We're a compliance management solution. Right. That's what we are. And we didn't change a thing, and we just changed how we talked about it.
Right.
And so halfway through 2019, we got great traction. One of our great early customers was Utah Olympic Legacy Foundation, which runs the 3 Olympic venues in Utah. Right. They were one of our early champions. We signed on a bunch of other really great organizations, and people started hiring us to take care of getting their compliance in order, right? All the safe sport training, background checks, and all those things. And so this was 2019, really finally started taking off, which was fortunate because we were running out of money. I raised some money from friends and family.
Sure.
And then some local impact investment funds. And then COVID happened, and 100% of our revenue is coming from youth and amateur sports. Right. And 100% of the reason we're doing what we're doing is to make youth and amateur sports better. And suddenly youth and amateur sports doesn't exist. It's stopped dead.
It's totally stopped. It's crazy. Wow.
So
it sounds like some stuff's happening, right? Didn't they just announce it?
Yeah.
Sport, they're playing some fall sports and stuff like that, and there is a little bit of training and stuff like that. I know some of the teams are at least doing some training back up at the Utah Olympic Park. And
yeah, well, and so what we ended up doing, so after the shock wore off and we were kind of bummed for a little while, and then it was like, wait, after COVID or to emerge from COVID, you're just going to have to comply with new standards.
Right.
We built the compliance management solution. We'll just apply it to COVID. Yeah. And so we created a lightweight app within the app called Clear to Play, and it allows parents to respond to a symptom tracker temperature checks and proximity on the app before they leave for the venue, before they leave for the field or the mountain or the rink, and we rolled that out about 6 weeks ago.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah. And so I decided, you know what? Nobody has any money right now. And, you know, in the right spirit of things, let's just make it free. And hopefully those groups will later migrate over to our complete compliance solution, and then they'll pay us. And it went absolutely nuts, Bobby. It was like,
that's awesome.
Yeah, it was too awesome. We got crushed.
Gotcha.
So we got crushed. The system slowed way down. We struggled. Everybody had to go super hard to figure out ways to optimize the solution. And we decided, well, you know, and it got really expensive. So like, okay, got to pivot again. We got to charge a minimum $6 per user per year. So that was like, I figured that's the minimum we can charge and break even on it. And demand has kept going. So, you know, we've got like 10,000 users using it now. Every day, including Park City Ski and Snowboard is using it.
Gotcha.
I think that's, and different elements in the Utah Olympic Legacy Foundation are using it as well. So it's been a kind of a crazy ride, and that's where we're at today.
That's, I mean, that's fantastic. I mean, one of those things that, you know, as you're kind of going through, that kind of popped into my mind there is perseverance. I mean,
yeah.
And not only this, but all those different startups and stuff that you've kind of done. Just talk about a little bit of that perseverance to kind of keep going, right? You spend all that time and things really aren't working out the way you want, which seems to happen so often in life. I mean, what's the attitude you kind of bring to keep your head down and keep working? Like, hey, I know this is a great idea. I know this is sooner or later going to get traction. I just need to see this through.
Yeah, I think, you know, I hear that question asked a lot, and I'm always looking for the answer to that too. Because the truth in my case is I don't always keep the faith, right? Like I have days where I'm like, damn, there are too many obstacles. You know, I just don't see, as long as it's like going back to mogul skiing, if I can see the line, I can ski it, right? If I can see the line through the challenge, I can do it.
Yeah.
But I often lose sight of it, and I'm like, now what? And kind of, this is not a very elegant or probably not a very wise solution, but I just always say to myself, well, okay, you could quit. You could definitely quit. What does the day after you quit look like? Because the moment where you would say, I quit, the stress is off me, I lost, okay? I bet, I lost, stress is off me. That might actually feel good. But I try and think about, what is that next, what do you do next, right? And the fear of that day and the just like, you know, I've been through it before where I didn't quit, but it's been taken away and you still have to regroup. And you don't ever get to quit, right? Like you don't get to quit. You know, I have a family. I still got to provide for my family. I still got to, you know, I'm still alive. I'm still driven to do things. So I think about that day after, right? And then I go, okay, I can't quit. And sometimes I just have to say to myself, I don't necessarily believe that I can see the way, but here are 10 things I can do today. Right? Like I've got a big list of things that I got to do. So I'm just going to keep doing things and keep looking and see if I can finally see the line. And then, you know, usually it'll appear. And sometimes you just struggle along in the dark for a long time and you just keep going because that's what you do.
Right. That's what you know. Well, I mean, not everyone does that though, you know? I mean, I think that's part of your obviously your attitude and things of that nature to kind of keep going, because not everyone does kind of just keep the head down and keep driving. You know, for me, I would say that's definitely true, but I know that like I've just always had a good attitude. Like I'm always a happy person. I'm always looking forward to the next thing and the next challenge, and like kind of thriving under that pressure, that challenge, or something that's new. Like there's always that kind of what's next, right? And that every morning I wake up with a smile on. I can't think of any days where I'm waking up like, oh man, other than maybe when the dog died.
Yeah.
But I mean, for the most part, I would say 90% of the time it's a smile on, and what's kind of today going to bring. And
yeah, I think that's right. And I think in my case, you know, I'll quote my wife on this. My wife had a really funny thing to say just before we got married. So just before we get married, she said,
"This is good. I'm getting married in September, so I need some good advice here." So.
Okay. Well, this is not exactly advice, but this is a great line, I thought. So she said, "You just got to promise me one thing." It's like, okay, you know, I'm stoked. I'm whatever you want, honey. I'm, you know, never cheat on you. Great, got that one. You know, whatever. And she just goes, one thing, don't ever bore me. And I'm like, so it's our little joke. Like nowadays, things have been rocky. Like we've been together 20 years. Things have been up and down for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'll always go, hey, you bored yet? Nope. You know, and truly, you know, I haven't been bored a minute in my life, right? Like, I mean, okay, maybe a minute, but I haven't been bored. I haven't ever gone, I just got to live this boring life and get up and Groundhog Day and bump, go to the office or punch the clock. I haven't ever felt that, because the flip side is, you know, my living and, you know, there's been no assured path. There's been just, the only thing secure is constant insecurity. Like, I know that, right? Like, just what I'm doing now could blow up tomorrow for sure.
Right. So kind of being like paranoid a little bit, right? A little bit of like, you know, a part of that insecurity, and is this going to work, you know, or is this not? Kind of looking over your shoulder, making sure. A little bit of paranoia is kind of what it sounds like to me, a little bit, right?
A little paranoia, you know, a little insecurity. Like, I still am trying to prove myself to myself. Right. My parents have passed away. I'm not trying to prove myself to them or anybody else, but I'm still trying, you know, to prove to myself that that I'm getting everything out of this life that I'm supposed to. Right.
Really like, squeezing that lemon, getting all the juice out of it.
Yeah. I mean, you know, none of these are original thoughts, I know, but
no, it's good. It's good.
You know, I heard a really good one. I was in Nagano working for CBS at that Olympics. And there was an athlete whose name I won't mention, but wasn't supposed to win the race. And I'll keep gender out of it. Wasn't supposed to win the race. And I said, you know, I got to do the interview, right? And it's, you know, what did you think? You looked up at the clock and the curtain of snow funnels down, and you look up and you see number 1 next to your name. And what's the first thing you think? What's the first thing you think? And this athlete says, the first thing, truly the first thing, I got to get my warm-up pants on so nobody can see how big my butt is. And I'm like, well, I think everybody's driven by some insecurities, right?
No, absolutely.
And insecurity is probably a good thing, right? Like, don't you hate, like, you know, I'm getting old now. I hate when I hear myself sounding old and being like, I know how it is. It's like, no, you don't. No, you don't. You know, like, you know, you see the old men at the coffee shop or whatever, you know, like they're so sure they know how it is. And that's such a, you know, once you've gotten secure in, I know everything and I can't learn anything else. And then you're bored.
Yeah, that's a great attitude to have, though. You know, speaking of the warm-up pants, kind of makes me think of when I was reading Andre Agassi's book, and he was talking about whatever, I think it was Wimbledon, or I think it was Wimbledon final, and the whole time he was just worried about, because he had the fake
fake hair,
and he was just the whole match. All he was thinking about was his hair falling off and not tennis, like, whatsoever, which is just crazy. Talking about those insecurities.
Exactly. And you know what? I say don't fight your insecurities. Let them drive you, right? Like,
Don't fight them, let them drive you. I like that.
I mean, by the way, I love that book. And the guy that wrote that book is one hell of a good writer.
Yeah.
He also wrote a book called The Tender Bar, which is just an amazingly beautifully written. It's an autobiography.
Okay.
It's so good. I'm trying to think of his name. It's like J.R. Moehringer, maybe.
Okay. The Tender Bar?
The Tender Bar.
The Tender Bar, okay.
It won some award. It's probably 20 years old now, but he wrote Agassi's book.
Okay. He wrote it.
Right?
Gotcha. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Fantastic writer. Really good at capturing that stuff.
Yeah, I always love those tennis books, because especially when I was competing, I feel like it's one of the few things that's a little bit close to kind of that individual sport, right? Even though you are playing against someone or something like that, you're still on your own. You have your own team and your own kind of coaches. And so I always love getting the tennis kind of perspectives and stuff like that. It's interesting too, because I've read Sampras's book, and he is so different compared to Agassi. And that's, I think his is a Champion's Mind, I think.
Is it as good?
It's just different. It's different in the fact it's, how Agassi's going to Taco Bell and do it in all kinds of, drugs and all kinds of crazy stuff. Sampras is much more of the, not as exciting. It's much more of the, focused. This is so it kind of, if it fits the right personality, right? That was Sampras's personality.
Right.
And, you see it obviously you'd see it in skiing and all kinds of other sports. You have those people that are super focused. And then you have the other one that likes to party and is talented enough and gets the same, two completely different paths that get to the same spot. Have you ever seen Rush with Chris Hemsworth and
the race car driving
the race car, Niki Lauda?
Yes.
And there's kind of the same thing, right? You have Chris Hemsworth's character.
That's right.
His name was just total kind of party guy living on the edge, and then you have Niki Lauda, the focused, going in, does his work, doesn't drink, doesn't party, kind of, and it's just so fascinating to kind of see,
Absolutely. By the way, have you seen Netflix's series F1 Drive to Survive?
No, I haven't.
It's so good. I mean, it's so good that I called a buddy of mine who still makes documentaries and super high level ones, and now he's doing series for Netflix. He used to run Peter Jennings Productions. He made Steep. Steep was one of the films I was involved in. And I said to him, you have to watch this. It's so incredibly well done. There's 2 seasons. It's all about Formula One, but it's all behind the scenes. And just fantastic. And it's by the producers who produced Senna.
Okay.
Do you see Senna?
I think I've seen.
Senna is about Ayrton Senna. It won. Did it win?
I feel like I've seen it.
Did it win Sundance? It won something big.
So how did you get down that path? I mean, speaking, one of those startups and everything else. Speaking about how did you get down the kind of film?
The movie.
Talk about CBS as well. Like, kind of how did you branch into that area?
It all came out of skiing. So after college, I found myself in Vail, Colorado, because I wanted to ski moguls, and that happened to coincide with the start of this pro mogul tour. Mm-hmm. So like I couldn't go and do the process to get on the U.S. team. I was already 21, right?
Gotcha. Yeah.
So, and already out of college. So I found myself in Vail, and just the people that I met through skiing, and they've been lifelong friends, but we've also ended up working on things together. The movie switching over to movies actually happened. I had a friend, so I came out to Utah to do a story on Sundance, and I was supposed to go skiing with Robert Redford, and I was so stoked because Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid.
It's a classic.
Just I love that movie, and the Sting.
Yeah.
Right. Like, and so I didn't get to go ski with Redford, but I got to go ski with this other guy who lived down there, and he was an actor. His name's Brian Wimmer. And so I got to go ski with Wimmer. We got to be buddies. He was acting in LA at the time, and he was in movies. And one day he calls me and he says, and I said, I really want to make movies. And I had met this screenwriter in Vail.
Okay.
And he helped me learn how to write screenplays. Okay. And, I helped him sort of become a better skier and fit into the Vail life. And so at the time I had written a few screenplays and gotten nowhere. I'd actually even gotten hired to write 2 and rewrite another one. And so anyway, Wimmer calls me up one day and he says, there's this guy and he's in Park City, and he's just about to sell his ski mountain to American Skiing Company, and he wants to go back and make movies, and he has an idea for a movie. And so this guy's name was Kenny Griswold, and at the time it was called Wolf Mountain.
Yeah.
And so I called up my editor at Skiing Magazine. I said, I want to do a story on this guy. He was like, okay, cool, go do a story. So I went out to write a story about Kenny. In the time I spent with him, he ended up pitching me his idea for a movie, and I loved the idea. And the pitch was, especially at the point in my life where I was something I was thinking about. The pitch was 4 guys, all 35 years old, been best friends since high school. Mm-hmm. Some have done well, some haven't done quite so well. They disagree as to why. Was it daddy's money? Was it the connections? What, know?
Yeah.
They make a bet. They say 30 days, new city, no cash, no connections. You can't access your past life at all. 4 guys leave Los Angeles and they go to Salt Lake City, where they've never been before. They can't break the law and they can't access their past lives. That was the pitch he gave me.
Right.
And I was like, I love that. And, I want to write it. I want to write that, and by the time we got around to that conversation, he was completing the sale of Wolf Mountain.
Okay.
There was some money available to make a movie.
Right. And
so I wrote the movie, and then I co-produced it with him, and he directed. I was the second unit director, and made the movie, shot all in Utah, and really interesting experience. Not all positive.
Yeah, it has to be super, super interesting.
Super interesting. I mean, what was really, really cool for me was, I made up these characters in my head, right? And, Kenny had a vision. So it was partially his vision and partially I was fleshing out all the details of who these people were and what they'd say and all this stuff.
Yeah.
And then, you're just living in your head, and we cast the thing, and then all of a sudden it's the first day of shooting. Mm-hmm. And there are 10 18-wheelers at the location. Like, there are all these trucks, all these people, there's catering, there's all this stuff. And it's like, there's a guy named Craig Sheffer, and Craig was in River Runs Through It.
Okay.
Right? He's the brother who wasn't Brad Pitt, right?
Okay.
So that's Craig Sheffer. So he comes out of the wardrobe trailer, and he's got this T-shirt on, and I had written him as kind of a stoner, right? He was kind of the stoner character, and I had just written in one little sentence that he's wearing a T-shirt that says "Hemp brings hope." And bear in mind, this is a long time ago. This is 98, okay. Right? Yeah. So, and he's got that T-shirt on, and he's got 2 other versions of the same T-shirt, and he just walks out, and he's like, "Bill, which one? Which one did you have in mind?" And I was like, it was so mind-blowing and so cool. Like,
Yeah.
these things that I've made up, and boom, now it's for real. And he's saying the words that I
Right. Yeah.
cooked up.
Visions coming to life.
Yeah.
Right
So
before
it
your
was
eyes. Yeah.
pretty amazing. But so anyway, I did that. That was a feature film. We sold that. I ended up moving to LA to hopefully write and direct other films.
Right. To kind of pursue it a little more.
Yeah. Failed at that. Totally failed.
Gotcha.
Took about a year probably to realize, no, I didn't want that dream bad enough to live in Los Angeles.
Gotcha.
Right?
And is that just the being out in LA? Because it's such a different, I mean, especially compared to Park City or other places, the environment is so much different. And, you know, originally being from like New York compared to the times I've been to LA, it's just such a different vibe of person where like at New York, they'll tell you to GFY like to your face.
Yeah,
where
totally.
in LA, I feel like they'll piss on you and tell you it's raining and like, oh yeah, let's do lunch. Like everything's great. I'm like, I'd much rather you just tell me GFY than like tell me everything's great and you stab me in the back at the same. Like it's such an interesting contrast between East and West Coast there. And my experiences in LA have not been that sweet, although the weather is fantastic.
Yeah, I mean the weather's cool. The smog sucks.
Right.
I'm like you. I'm from Boston.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. It just didn't play to my strengths.
Right.
Everybody's tall, beautiful, and I love you, babe. And I'm not tall. I'm not beautiful, and I don't love you, babe. You know. So
love you, babe. Let's do lunch.
Yeah. I mean, I just no. So it took me a while to realize that you couldn't. And I was just probably not good enough at what I was doing.
Mm-hmm.
And there, you know, I always had this idea of people in LA, like they're flaky and soft and not hardworking, but they might be flaky and soft, but man, they work really hard. Right. Yeah. And I probably just wasn't good enough at it. And so I left, went to San Diego, ran a .com company. And then when I finally got back to making films, what I really wanted to do was make documentaries. And so.
And yeah, you came out with the Edge of Never, Edge of Never, Ready to Fly, and then what was the Grand Rescue, right?
Grand Rescue. I was involved in Steep too, but that's
Steep
a long story.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So what is that? Well, I mean, the documentary is so interesting because it's reality, right? It's based in reality, and you're kind of filming these moments. The Edge of Never was about Trevor Peterson, who used to be a really big extreme skier, super kind of famous, and would always kind of do crazy stuff. And he died skiing a couloir in Chamonix, France. And so this documentary was about his son, Kai, also a professional skier, you know, super talented, and kind of going back and conquering those demons and skiing it was the same couloir that his dad died in, right?
Right, exactly.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yep. So, you know, I really like telling stories, and you know, sort of that's the one thing that's been the unifying factor in all the different stuff I've done is generally I can tell a story, and I can tell it in a book, I can tell it in a magazine story, I can tell it on an Excel spreadsheet, I can tell it in a PowerPoint, you know, I can. So but in documentaries, what I really liked is trying to make sense of messy life and put it into a story that is compelling and hopefully transcendent. So, you know, and I kind of fell into this theme that, and I didn't realize I was doing it for a while, but all the projects I worked on tended to be about making family where you find it and how those ad hoc families can help us overcome our greatest challenges. Right. And so after a while, I started recognizing that in myself, that I was looking for that or finding that or whatever. So and it's to make a documentary, you're just constantly winging it. Like you're going out, you're trying to stand back. If you're doing it right, you're not manipulating the situations, at least overtly. And you're trying to capture a narrative that illuminates something about all of us and not just the particulars of this weird story.
Yeah. How difficult is that, like being the director and trying to capture that moment? It's pretty.
Yeah, I mean it's hard, but really you make a documentary in the editing room,
Mhm.
right? Like,
Right.
I mean, Edge of Never, gosh, we had so many cameras rolling, and you're just putting people in place, and you're just hoping that, I mean, for the action sequences, you're just hoping
Yeah.
that something great happens, and then, you know, for the dialogue and stuff, you're hoping to catch some little nugget,
Right.
and you hope that you catch the right ones, and then you have to sort of write around it to make it make sense.
Right. And so was that the what was that the first documentary you did? Was The Edge of Never?
Um, Pretty much. I mean, I had done some television.
Yeah. Mhm.
I had helped these old ski buddies of mine.
Uh-huh.
One whose name's Tom Yellen, who runs the documentary group now, but he used to run Peter Jennings Productions.
Okay.
And then another ski buddy who is the executive producer at CBS's 48 Hours.
Okay.
So I helped them produce episodes.
Gotcha. So you had a little bit of kind of an idea before kind of going off and going in it and getting involved.
Yeah, and Edge of Never was started off as a big collaboration with Peter Jennings,
Mm-hmm.
and I raised the money. Peter was going to narrate it. At the time, it was involving Kai's story.
Mm-hmm.
We went to Chamonix. We shot. Peter was supposed to show up in Chamonix.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't because he was diagnosed with the fast-moving kind of lung cancer.
Oh, God.
And he died, and he was dead like 3 weeks later.
Wow.
And so that whole thing, I kind of lost that whole film.
Right.
And that's when I wrote the book. So
Mm-hmm.
I was like, I've lived this amazing narrative here of this father-son, and I have, you know, hundreds of hours of footage and lots of dialogue, and I'm going to write a book about it because I don't think anybody's ever going to get this story. The story's
Right.
never going to see the light of day. So I wrote a book called The Edge of Never. The book did well, and then a different director was brought in to try and resuscitate what had then become changed to Steep.
Okay.
And so I wasn't really welcome to be part of that.
Gotcha.
Complicated. But I was able to go back and buy the footage that I had directed of Kai and all the stuff with Plake,
Okay.
Glenn Plake and Mike Hattrup, and
Yeah.
you know, and then I was able to go raise the money again, and for the second time for the same story, and then finally make the movie.
That's awesome.
Yes.
That's,
So it's a weird and twisted tale.
I mean, talking about perseverance, though, I mean, that's awesome to be able to kind of, you know, you want to see that full view of your vision kind of come to life. You know, not only do you get it with the book, go back through, get the footage, and then you kind of get to see your full vision.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it looks like perseverance, and I guess it was, but it's just kind of like, oh, this is what I'm doing, and
Right.
and people believe in me, and people have, you know, people
Yeah.
have sacrificed for this vision that I've had, and they've given me money, and
Mm-hmm.
you know, what would it look like the day after I quit, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Right. Yeah.
I'm not gonna quit. So
yeah. For people kind of going into becoming entrepreneurs, or they have these ideas, and what kind of words of wisdom, you know, or piece of advice, you know, because it is navigating through that fear of failure and those kind of big scary things. What would you give them?
Let's see. So I think, first of all, when you say advice, I've always made it a point not to offer advice except in one circumstance. I think I learned something really important. There was a period where my mom had died. My dad was in the early stages of Alzheimer's. So we moved him from Boston out to here, and we took care of him for 7 years. And at the same time, I had little kids. And it was a really, really trying time. And, you know, my dad would make it so much harder. Not his fault. He was, you know, deteriorating, and he would do things like he'd go rent another apartment, and I'd put him in assisted living, and he'd bust out, and he'd go start living somewhere else. And so and then, you know, so whenever I try and help him, he'd get mad. You know, my little kids wanted my time, and it was the one time in my life where it's like, I can clearly see the right thing to do here, and I can clearly see that nobody's going to pat you on the back for this one, right? There's going to be no big reward. Dad's going to die, right? That's where this story ends. And, you know, your wife and your kids are going to resent you because you can't spend as much time with them as you'd like. And so, you know, and I really tried to do everything as best I could. But the one piece of advice that I figured out from that was like, you just got to laugh more, right? Like when things would make me so angry, like I get so pissed, like I am trying so hard here, and you just put another damn obstacle, and, you know, like just laugh more. I mean, that sounds stupid, but like that's my one piece of advice.
That's good.
Just laugh more. And then I think my other, like a more tactical thing, if you're going to be an entrepreneur, choose the right partner, right? Choose the right partner. Not business partner. The right life partner. Because in my experience, you can't fight all day and completely carry the belief for everybody who believes in you, if you go home and the person there doesn't believe in you and doesn't, you know, support what you're doing. So like, you know, I've been really lucky and blessed to have a wonderful partner there who's, you know, thick and thin, as long as I haven't bored her, right? So I guess those would be my two things: laugh more, like when it gets really hard, try and find the humor, and, you know, try and pick a partner who can be there for you.
Support you,
and I do know people who are so strong that they can fight every demon all day long, and then fight with their husband or wife when they go home. I can't. Like, there's got to be a place where you can go and be supported. And, you know, and
definitely.
That's all I got.
Good.
Not so profound, but
no, definitely. I like it a lot. I think it's definitely good. Now, a lot earlier, talking about all the different things you have to get done in a day. With Great Coach, you know, you got your list of all those different things you're trying to tackle each and every day. What kind of helps you stay focused, or how do you kind of prioritize being able to tackle those objectives? Do you take a lot of notes? Are you a note taker, or how do you kind of organize, and how are you able to kind of attack those things? I know some people just have reminders on their phone. I know like Hannah Kearney, she's got Post-it notes all over the place and bullet points, and I need to take care of this, and there's so many different strategies. So I'm just kind of curious what helps you attack it.
I'm pretty old school. Let me see if I can. I'm old school. That's what I do. A list every day.
Every day. Okay.
Every day. And the only real, I mean, it doesn't take discipline for me to write down all the things I got to do and think about. The only discipline that I have is that I always at least try to do the hardest thing first.
Okay.
Right? Like, I just hate having that call you don't want to make hang over you all day, because then every other thing that you got to do, you do poorly. So it's just like, you know, and sometimes it's like one where I go, I got to do this one. I know I don't even have the chops to do it well, but I got to do it and move it on. And, you know, maybe I do a lousy job at it, but then I'm past it. And then then I've got momentum.
it's not like in the back of your head all day, like, oh
Yeah.
boy, I'm going to push this to the end of the day. And then it's just, you're thinking about it all day rather than taking care of it first.
Yeah. And I think it's a good discipline too,
Sure,
to
definitely.
kind of like take a look at your day and go, okay, that's going to suck.
Yeah.
You know, and just realize, oh, I got that one. I got that. Yeah. I can see how to do that. This one, I got no clue. Good. I'll do that.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, that's good. I'm going to try and heed that advice there. I like that. I like getting, cause I definitely can find myself getting caught up like, oh, I'll do that at the end of the day because and then it is on my mind, like most of the day, like, damn it, I still have to do this at the end of the day, where I think I'm going to try and switch that around and think I don't want to do.
It just makes it a bad day too.
Right. Yeah, sure.
It's harder to have a good day when you got the bad thing coming.
Yeah. No,
yeah.
definitely.
It can also ruin your day, but at least you get it out of the way.
Well, thank you very much for taking the time.
Yes.
I really appreciate it. We got to do this again.
Before we wrap up, I do have to compliment you and say that I'm so jealous that I didn't figure out the shamrocks on the knees in mogul skiing.
Yeah.
Like, damn, I wish I had done that.
Well, I mean,
so
it's a pretty straightforward, easy of how it all kind of started. It's very just organic. It was my grandfather used to play the bagpipes in the New York St. Patty's Day Parade. So we were, O Carol, drop the O, obviously Carol. And so always kind of grew up with it. And it was actually Junior Nationals was here in Park City. And Singles Day was on St. Patrick's Day.
Oh, wow.
So my parents were like, you got to do something for St. Patty's Day. And it actually just started out, I had these tiny little stickers that I just put on the knee patches. And kind of it just started to like grow from there. I was like, why don't I just have them on all the time? Because, nowadays, not so much with the creativity, but back in the day, you had Travis Cabral with the smiley faces and all the different things on your knee pant. Jean-Luc Broussard with that really fluorescent kind of yellow and everything else. So I was like, all right, I got to, I'll run with the Shamrocks, I'll go with it. And it kind of became my trademark. Everywhere around the world, people might not have known my name, but they definitely knew the Shamrocks. I was known for that. So it's kind of cool how that worked out.
Nice job on that. I wish that I had seen that however many years ago that was. Because that's a great visual, and I'm just, some scrappy Irish guy from Boston. So it would have been perfect.
Perfect. Yeah. Well, next time, hopefully after this is passed, we'll have a little more of a studio. We can have a couple beers and chat a little bit more about the next venture. Well,
we got to finish this one first.
Yeah, exactly. Well, thanks a lot for taking the time, and we'll talk to you soon. All right. Bye, everybody.